Got a big update to the draft. So while I still have pick 48, see there, the list, 91 teams, you go down, 102 teams available. That means we have 11 newbies coming in. That also means that I'm going to have a pretty solid team. With it sorted by overall, 48 sits at the very bottom of the 78 range. That means if everyone goes the best team available, I'm going to have a 78 overall, which isn't bad. But that's not what I'm looking for, though. Power conference wise, it could lead to some interesting things. Because you got Syracuse, you got Stanford, Maryland, and Houston if they're available. I feel like Wisconsin might drop because of the team speed. And on top of that, going down, you have, I believe, Purdue and Oklahoma State, Purdue 74, the suffering with Oklahoma State has a 73. That's the lowest rated power conference team, if I'm thinking correctly. But there's a lot of teams in that 70 to 73 range. Really 73 to 74. To make for some interesting picks here. Depending on what I'm trying to do. Am I trying to parlay a pick into something great? Am I trying to have some reasonable success with the team, that is available? That is to be determined. Hell, Kentucky may be there too as an 80, maybe Mississippi State. I mean, their teams aren't terrible overall, but they're in conferences where they're probably going to get their stuff pushed in, being nice. And then you can look here. This will factor into my decision. Who are the rivals? So the good thing about being in the middle of the pack is you kind of get to see some of the board unfold, who's going where, what teams are available, what conferences may be traps or, landmine, and which ones have opportunities. So looking here, you can see in the ACC, Stanford, your conference goal is to win 2 conference games. Now, yeah, you're going to play some tough teams, but you just got to win 2. Now, your rivalry games, Cal, Notre Dame, SMU, San Jose State. See, SMU's an 85. That's a huge mismatch. Notre Dame, 88. That's a huge mismatch. So you know what you're walking into if you're taking those teams. Whereas a team like Cal, they're an 80 overall. It's SMU and Stanford. 80 to 85 isn't as bad. And obviously Stanford's a 77. That works in your favor. Whereas looking at the Big 12, Oklahoma State, thankfully it's not Oklahoma. So that is kind of a nice thing, but it's still Texas Tech. The best team in the conference, a 15-point difference. Probably would stay away from that. Wow, Texas Tech really has it good if you look at it. Their rivals, Houston and Oklahoma State, the 2 worst teams in the conference. And not just bad, like 10 points and above bad, but they also have the most ridiculous conference goal, going 8-1 and making the CFP. So their expectations are really, really high. Looking at Purdue, a 74 overall to win 2 conference games. Indiana, 88. Notre Dame, already looked at that, 88. That's rough. Illinois, 84. With a 74 team, not really in your favor. So probably would want to stay away from that because that just doesn't sound fun. Maryland, a little more respectable with their rival. You got to win 4 games, but Rutgers is the only rival, and they're an 81. So it seems a little more reasonable. We'll have to see who's home and away. But the mid-major conferences is probably where I'm going to go. It's going to be weird being on the Outliers podcast and having a G5 team, but this is probably the way that I'm going to go. You got Conference USA, 69 to 76, but even when you look at the rivalry games, they're not absurdly ridiculous within reason. So it's closer. You're still going to have to win 2 conference games if you're at the bottom of the conference, maybe 3. I'm looking at you. The MAC. Now, it's a little bit different because you've got Chip, and Chip, he makes that 72 look different, but there are some solid teams in the MAC if you're looking for different things. Western Michigan, I may be looking at you. Rivalry with Central Michigan and EMU. So it's split. It'd be fun to play against Chip, but then you also have to factor in, man, the defense is probably going to drive you nuts in the conference. Just have to make the best of it. The Mountain West, one that I've definitely looked at. I would have to pick a team that has Boise on the schedule, though. That would be the caveat. Nevada, the worst team, the 9-point difference with Boise. But they do play Boise. Utah State is an 8-point difference. Not Boise State, man. Those rivalry games are interesting, aren't they? Fresno, Nevada, San Diego State, and Utah. So San Diego State, closest in overall with a 78. Fresno 76. There's definitely a talent gap there. Understandable. They're the best team in the conference. They have to play someone, right? 8-point difference. But Utah State, an 8-point difference, that's your only rivalry game. Doesn't look as appealing, A team like Wyoming, a 74 overall. Your rivalry games are against Hawaii, a 77, and Colorado State, a 74. Have to see maybe how that manifests. Colorado State, you've got Air Force and Wyoming. I'd have to, pretty sure Colorado State's not available. Are they available? Can't remember. They are. Can't remember if Fear Cap won in the draft. So, teams to look at. You got the offense, the defense. The view here just doesn't really take you anywhere because nothing's populated as of yet. There's things being updated. All right, we have the trusty draft board here, so to speak, for the list. So you can add teams here. So clicking on them doesn't do anything. You can't drag them over, but you can add to the list. And just as an example to show how this looks, there's some teams that I've looked at. So let's take Kentucky. Add it to the list. Let's take New Mexico. New Mexico State. Northern Illinois. Well, San Jose State came off my list. Texas State, Troy, thank you. UTEP, Western Michigan, Western Kentucky. So these are teams that I've looked at so far. So as we scroll back up to the top, you can see here, this is my list. So it sorts top to bottom based on the order that you add them, but you can move them around. So for example, UTEP has been pretty high on my list. I can move them up. You have to scroll like that, but I can move them up. Move Northern Illinois down. They're at the bottom. And as teams get drafted, they will come off the board, not just here, but also here. So you have a running, you have the running situation or current situation of the draft reflected. I'm not really sure who I end up going with, but I just think it's cool here that you're able to keep everything current. So when the pick comes, either you would let an admin know. If you don't let them know within the 5-minute period, they're going to come to your board and take the highest team available. So Kentucky, they are my second favorite team. They're the only of my favorite teams available in the draft. I would consider them. It is kind of nice because since I draft later, I can see who's going to the SEC, who fills up on their schedule, would I want to play them, would I not want to play them, what does the conference look like as a whole, and obviously knowing Kentucky's schedule, kind of filling in the dots. Now with some of the smaller conferences, it's going to take longer for them to fill up. So you're going to look and see, okay, who's going to that conference, who's not going to that conference, what situations look good. That's kind of the nice part about being in the middle of the draft. You don't want to be at the very end because your options are limited. But even if you're at the very end, though you may have some bad teams, you have the full picture of what the landscape is looking like in the NDL. So with pick 48, who will I get? I'm not fully sure. I have some ideas of teams that definitely have my interest, but I will not be able to really make that pick until we see, about maybe pick 30, 35. I'm kind of hoping that, and as we all do, kind of hope when it gets closer to your pick, the pick take a little longer, just so you have more time to process what's going on and maybe take some teams, put them on, move them off the board. The thought was of, making a list from 1 to 48. Realistically, the problem with that is I don't want to think about 48 teams. I want to think about maybe 10 to 12 teams. But even then, because of the way a conference may fill out, that may draw you to other teams that you didn't consider because, hey, this situation doesn't seem so bad. Because remember, I'm looking at this. I'm not looking at staying at wherever I'm going for a long time. I'm one of those coaches that bounces around. I'm mercenary. So I'm looking for a situation where I can try to be successful, have a winning season. It would be nice to have one of those after having a losing one, but see if I can bounce back from going 4-8 to having a good season with low goals that I can parlay into a top pick. That's the aim. That's what I'm shooting for. And tomorrow, you'll know who I have because the pick